This discussion is about the Philippine Revolution of 1896. So we are going to tackle what are the events and the timeline, of course, of the events and what transpired during this time as to why the Filipinos resorted to armed revolution or to armed struggles. By 1896, there were concrete and objective conditions in the economy, society, and government or governance that justified revolution. At that time of the Katipunan, the people, however, were not totally united. The wealthy and educated class was divided on the issue of independence and the use of force to obtain it. It was the masses, mostly the poor, the less educated, and the illiterate, led by the Katipunan who were ready. In fact, Rizal was not into this kind of idea because he understands that the entire Filipino people is not ready for this. And he knew it well. That is why he discouraged. He discouraged on resorting to armed struggles or armed revolution to commit independence. While the rich in the elite, uh, those who have wealth and influence, are divided as well. Most of them refuse to support the Katipunan financially, except for Dr. Pio Valenzuela. And if you can remember, Dr. Pio Valenzuela was the one who was the rescuer of the works of Rizal in Europe, the Noli Me Tangere, and if I'm not forgotten, also the El Filibusterismo, because Rizal was broke then, and only with the help of Pio Valenzuela, his friend, it was published. Unfortunately, the conflict over leadership inside the Katipunan, the elite versus the non-elite, caused the rift that resulted in the tragic death of Bonifacio, founder and leader of the armed revolution. Of course, you know well about the factions, no? The Magdalo and the Magdiwang factions of the Katipunan. Of course, I am going to talk that about later. Just a bit of my take on this thing, especially that the Katipunan were ready to resort to a bloody revolution, while uh, the educated ones were not ready. If you are going to compare that in our current society, the determining factor or the one who is very decisive when it comes to our elections are this group of people, the proletariat, if I may describe it, those under average, no, below average. Many just don't want to admit that they are living below average because we think that we are in the average level. But this group of people, not just for the sake of discussion, this group of people is the one taking the very decisive action, determining the fate of our nation. The elite, the educated, as well as the wealthy Filipinos may have the number, but not that as much as the number of those um, in the masses, like those in the lower ranks, if I may describe that in terms of classes or below average. No? Of course, as we try to empower education, as we try to encourage youth to educate themselves, to be part of the education system, to be educated per se. Many are still not able to go to school for the reasons that one of that is the financial incapability. We know that education is very expensive. Not to mention, except I guess for the state universities and colleges and institutions that is subsidized by the government. But for the private institutions, it's very expensive. And one as we proceed, one of the causes of the revolution was the martyrdom of Rizal, who disengaged himself from the actual plan of the Katipunan. He disengaged himself, really. because he was not into it. He doesn't have the he doesn't want the idea of the armed struggle. And of course, yes, Rizal was one of the reasons who emboldened the armed revolution for the for towards independence, because he predicted revolution in his second book or novel, the El Filibusterismo. But prior to that, there are many events already, accumulated events, that we can say that the glass is already full. No, it has been added by Rizal. No? During the execution of the Gomborza, and then plus the abuses, the forced labor, and many more. A poet named Cecilio Apostol expressed it well when he said, "Qui si una bala destrozo tu craneo, tu idea en cambio destroyo un imperio," which means, though a bullet pierced or destroyed your skull, your idea destroyed an empire. Now, if you're going to compare an idea versus a bullet, of course, in an instant, bullet may destroy your skull, but an idea can destroy an empire. No, because if it will spread. It will penetrate the minds of many people. An empire might be destroyed. Imagine the ideology of Karl Marx. It was only an ideology, but then it was adopted by nations, and many nations has adopted it due to its real um, correspondence. Let me say that the fight is real. No, the fight is real between the poor and the rich. So, what are the conditions before the revolution? In 1895, Bonifacio was busy propagating the ideals of the Katipunan in many towns around Manila. Some Spanish authorities were already suspecting a brewing unrest related to an underground society whose purpose was to end Spanish rule. Through their spies, the friars informed the Governor General. However, he did not believe them, so nothing was done with it. But the rumors continued. So the friars were right all along. There was a secret smuggling of rifles and other weapons in the coast of Batangas. Now, as a response, the Governor General, as a response to the reports of the Governor General of the friars to the Governor General, he banished some of the prominent citizens of Batangas and Bulacan. But let us try to check what moved the people to plan for a revolution. Of course, one is general dissatisfaction. Imagine for how many centuries we've been under the claws of the Spanish Empire for around 3 centuries, more than 300 years. So there was indeed a general dissatisfaction, where in fact, since you cannot disobey them right in front of their face, many Filipinos were just smiling and obeying their instructions or their commands, but they have hatred inside them. Money was very difficult to earn. Dili siya basta-basta nimo ma-earn. You cannot get it right away. Very few Filipinos were gainfully employed. No, there are only a few Filipinos who were gainfully employed. In fact, that is still happening today. Many Filipinos are still underemployed, and many are just sticking to the job. They are that is not really on their specialized skill or their specialty or expertise, and many are also below the salary they should be getting. No, isang kumbaga it's just only enough, and enough is not enough, or not it's not okay. Let's just say that if you no longer have the job, you no longer have any money left on your own pocket. So how would you sustain yourself? No. So that is why still a few is still a few is gainfully employed up to now. No. Lives of the people was far from prosperous, although there are less cases of hunger during that time, but still it's far from prosperous. They suffered from heavy taxation, from abusive friars and civil authorities, and from lack of economic opportunities. The government then spent most of the annual budget for the army and the navy, while only small for public improvement. Let's say, for example, in 1894 to 1895, no, this is just 2 years before the revolution. 6.5 millions for the army and the navy, no, 6.5 million pesos for the army and the navy, while only zero point 0.6 million for public works. Now, this is the thing that should be focused on because the people can benefit from this, but it wasn't. Forced labor, no one is allowed to criticize the government, or else banishment and execution is the price to pay. So then, since there was already a brewing rumors about the secret organization whose aim is to topple the Spanish government, how was the Spaniards discovered the Katipunan? So there was then a priest, father or a friar, Father Mariano Hill, the parish curate of Tondo, province of Manila, was one of the friars who had earlier warned the Spanish civil authorities that this particular society he's talking about has been recruiting members. But they did not listen to him not until Patino came to the scene. This Patino, particular Patino, visited his sister in an orphanage in Mandaluyong. So probably his sister is a nun, no? Madre. Since he quarreled with another Katipunero, he told his sister about the Katipunan and its aims. So this is the problem, no? We tend to compromise loyalty if there is something like quarrel or disagreement. We tend to sacrifice the secrecy of an organization we tend to be loyal to, no? Because of probably anger or pride or whatsoever. Then that's the sister told the Madre Portera of the orphanage who advised Patino to tell Father Mariano Hill. This Madre Portera, murag yung role ani in a convent is tig ano na tig accommodate og bisita tig tubag og mga phone calls and others. So following that advice, Patino went to tell Father Hill, no, the Father Curate of Tondo, on August 19, 1896. Father Hill immediately rushed to the headquarters of Manila police and informed the officers. That night of August 19, the police arrested many innocent Filipinos. So what happened next? So upon the discovery, Bonifacio was in Caloocan with his wife, Gregoria de Jesus. Gregoria de Jesus was the second wife of Bonifacio. The first wife died, no, in a particular sickness a year after their marriage. So fearing of arrest, they moved to Balintawak and ordered his runners to inform all members that there would be a meeting in Balintawak on August 24. No, Balintawak is also one of the LRT station if you go to Manila. So there's LRT station, I mean. A huge meeting was held at the yard of Juan Ramos, son of Melchora Aquino, or the Tandang Sora, the mother of Katipunan. When Bonifacio asked his men of their if they are prepared to fight for freedom and independence, everyone shouted they were prepared to die. In that case, Bonifacio told them, "Bring out your cidulas and tear them to pieces to show that we are prepared to take up arms." That's what happened. All the men brought out their cedulas and tore them into pieces. Kanimang cedulas, it's a very important no, nga papel during this time. This symbolizes their identity and the records. No? Kung wala kay cedula, siguro, that is the community tax certificate today, but the community tax certificate is no longer that significant as it is before. It is very important. Mura ni siya Philippine National ID. No? Murag naa na diha tanan. So in that case, Bonifacio to yeah, I already said that. Um, so all the men brought out their cedulas and tore them into pieces. So the ground was littered with those pieces of paper, which to them symbolizes their slavery. No? So because that is their ano eh, kumbaga mo na katay nila sa into the Spanish government eh. They have to pay their taxes and everything. Then they shouted in one voice, "Long lived the Philippines! Long lived the Katipunan!" This event happened on August 23, is known as the city, oh, I'm sorry, the cry of the Pugadlawin. So after that, the fighting begins. First, of course, the city of Pugadlawin. From there, they tore to pieces the cedulas. Then Bonifacio and his men transferred to Sitio Pasong Tamo. There, on August 25, a short skirmish ensued in which one civil guard and two Katipuneros died or killed. The Spaniards and their hired Filipino soldiers, thinking that the rebels were strong, they retreated. No? Ingon naglagdagan kayo. So afterwards, the rebels retreated to Balara. No? When I say rebels, now this is how Agoncillo used the Philippine rebels because the government then is the Spanish government. So who is against the government or fighting against the government is called rebels. Uh, in the broad scenario, of course. Yeah, they retreated to Balara, then to Marikina, then to Hagdang Bato. So on August 28, Bonifacio issued a manifesto telling the people to take up the Filipino cause. He also set the attack on Manila for August 29, so nakaschedule. However, I'm sorry, he ended the manifesto by saying anybody who obstructs this secret ideal of the people will be considered a traitor and an enemy. Due to lack of reinforcement, no, and ammunitions, the attack on Manila did not take place. Instead, Bonifacio ordered to attack the arsenal at San Juan del Monte, and it's still within Metro Manila. A fighting broke out on August 30. Since the defending Spaniards were outnumbered, they are foolish to fight face to face, of course. So they fought a delaying battle while waiting for the reinforcements. So when the reinforcements arrived, Bonifacio and his men drove back, who suffered heavy losses. So pag inadagan si Bonifacio since the start of the struggle. Of course, the first one, it was not a victory because the Spaniards retreated. Afterwards, the Governor General by this time is Ramon Blanco. Due to this revolution, he issued a decree on August 30 to put the eight provinces under martial law. Cavite, Manila, Laguna, Batangas, Bulacan, Pampanga, Tarlac, and Nueva Ecija. If I'm not mistaken, these are the provinces that symbolizes the rays of our sun in the Philippine flag. Then the decree also states that whoever would surrender within 48 hours after the publication of the decree would not be tried by the military court. Now this is how it's being done. If it's martial law, then the power is transferred to the military. So the court the procedures will be under military court. Some Filipinos, including Dr. Pio Valenzuela, took advantage of this provision, fearing of further bigger consequences. I think, you know. Afterwards, persecution worsens since the implementation of martial law. Many were punished without trial. Heads of the families were shipped to the Carolines in the Pacific and to the Spanish penal colony in Africa. No? Gipang-banish ang mga lalaki sa mga padre de pamilya. Fort Santiago was packed with hundreds of prisoners, most of whom were innocent. No? Grabe. Dagan kayo ang gipang priso, no? In the kuan. Most of them are innocent. As long as you're a man in the family and you stayed at home, then you might be suspected and you might be executed. So, yeah, nagkadaghan ng mga pinariso dito sa Fort Santiago. If it happened that you will go to Manila, you can visit that place, no? Or you can also enter that, no? Medyo kuweba-kuweba na dito sa sulod na. So, and many, however, and also as a result, no, to those who are imprisoned in Fort Santiago, many died when the waters of the Pasig River entered the lower portion of the cells, while others died of suffocation, if you can imagine. In some places like Bulacan, the Spaniards massacred many people. Men were tortured to force them to tell on their friends and even relatives. In many cases, suspects were shot to death without any trial. Of September 4, four Katipuneros were executed in Bagumbayan Field, now part of Rizal Park. 13 suspects were executed in Cavite. 12 Bicolano patriots were killed, and 19 in Capiz. Many Filipinos, instead of staying at home, joined their countrymen in the field of battle. This is my take in this particular segment happening in our history. If you are under martial law because you think that there is some force against the government, there are so many sacrifices that might happen. There are so many atrocities that will happen in the process. I guess it's because of fear and worry in the part of the Spaniards that the revolution might grow and they will be outnumbered and outgunned, and they might lose in the long run. So that's why they prevented the uh, the growth and the spread of the Katipunan. So that's what happened. Now, if you can imagine in a particular history in martial law when Ferdinand Marcos Sr. implemented the martial law because he think that the country is an anarchy due to the large presence of the Communist Party of the Philippines or the rebels, mga rebelde, no, by with under the CPP and PA. That was the reason why he imposed martial law. So in the process, many were executed, many were tortured, many were vanished, and we do not even know where they are right now because until now wala pa nakita ang ilang lawas or whatsoever. If makita, I do not know if bukog na lang ba or whatsoever, diba? So that's what happened if you put the power into military. The enemy then for them is the CPP and PA. But what about the innocent ones accused of being members of the NPA? Executed, tortured, no, and then at trying to extract information to tell, no, kinsa ilang mga kauban, where in fact they are not uh, part of the group. Di gan isla part sa group, and many are still alive to tell their story, and that is very tragic, very unfortunate that they had experienced that. But still, since I don't know how blinded we are, we still, no, uh, adopted the sun, no? Just only for the for the sake of discussion in this part of history in the Philippines. But up to you. That is up to you. That's why I am trying to include some analysis now in context because many had suffered. The problem with us is that I kept on telling you is that once we are not affected, we will not speak or criticize. And this is what happened. The abuses during the Spanish time until they are not affected, with the abuses, they will not join. They will not join the cause of the Katipunan. Since many are being killed and executed and punished, even though they are only staying at home. Wala sila mahimo because since lalaki sila, pwede sila possible suspect sila nga mo join, no? So that's why no choice. Instead of staying at home, they join the countrymen in the field of battle. So in 1892, going back to 1892, Rizal was exiled to Dapitan, if you can remember. He was living peacefully there, helping people in their works. And in 1896, he asked, this is already in the when revolution broke out. In 1896, he asked the government to allow him to go to Cuba to serve as a military surgeon. The Cubans then were fighting for their independence from the Spaniards, no? Halos magkasabay ang revolution. Ang una-una lang tingali gamay ang revolution sa Cuba, then nahitabo ning sa Pilipinas. The masters of the Cubans citizens or the Cubans or Spaniards still, same with us. Rizal's request was granted, and from the Pitan he was brought to Manila Bay, where he waited for a steamer that would take him to Cuba by way of Spain. He was in Manila through a Spanish cruiser when the revolution broke out. Na siya sa Manila at that time from the Pitan. He refused to be rescued by revolutionaries offered to save him. Mao ganing siya mga bayani, no? Kay even Socrates, if you go back to the pillar of the philosophy, Socrates also offered by his followers, no, nga save siya or rescue siya, but refused. So, sailing for Spain on the way to Cuba, Rizal was ordered to return to Manila. Upon reaching Spain, he was detained and shipped back to Manila. So, igo pa lang gani pag-abot niya sa Spanya, kay mo diretso sa Cuba, gi-orderan na nga pabalikon, no? Because he was one of the primary suspects of the 1896 revolution. And then, when he reached the Philippines, he was imprisoned in Fort Santiago and later tried as a traitor to Spain. He defended himself with the help of a Spanish lawyer. He denied strongly any connection with the Katipunan and the plan to topple, no, and a plan to topple the government. But the military court did not listen to his arguments. He was sentenced to be shot to death, instead. Wala gyud siya paminawa. He was executed early morning of December 30, 1896. His death did not dishearten or discourage the revolutionaries. In the contrary, they are resolved to fight to the bitter end, whatever the outcome or the consequences are. Rizal's death, in fact, emboldened the Filipinos to fight for their country and its independence. Now, before we proceed to the ongoing events of the revolutions, let us insert the two factions of the Katipunan. So this situation happened after the initial victories of the Katipunan against the Spanish forces. After the victory at Imos on September 3, 1896, Emilio Aguinaldo, who belonged to the Magdalo faction, emerged as the most popular leader. Nahimo siya nga popular tungod kay sige siyang kadaog. His men as well as the Katipuners of the town of Imos defeated a superior force, Spaniards led by General Ernesto Aguirre. The general's sword was captured by Aguinaldo's men and it became his personal sword after that. Iyahan ang gi ano na, gi angkon niya iyaha. The Madiwonks, on the other hand, were also a strong force. Its leader was not Bonifacio. It was Mariano Alvarez, no? Was the uncle of Bonifacio. The Magdiwangs claimed that the Magdalos borrowed guns from them but never returned. Wala giuli. Iakyos sa Magdiwang ang grupo sa Magdalo nga gapanghulam sila og armas wa ginauli. The other faction also made the same claim. So to solve the rivalry which was causing divisions and distrust among the rebels, when the Spaniards renewed their offensives, territories formerly won by the Katipuners were taken. So para ayuhon ang gusot, no, between the two factions, Andres Bonifacio was invited to come to Cavite to unite the two factions. But he made the fatal mistake of allying himself with the Magdiwangs. So yang gialay himself with the Magdiwangs. No? When he accepted the title of Haring Bayan ng Katagalugan in the said faction. So tagaan siyang nindot nga pangalan or titulo sa Magdiwang faction. That's why he sided with the Magdiwang. He was supposedly to mediate, no? But instead, ini-side siya. He should have stayed neutral in the dispute between the two groups. And being not from the Cavite and not having won any victory over the Spaniards, he was viewed with suspicion and treated with disrespect down by the people of the province. Maliit siya sa mga Caviteños. Even as he claimed to be the Katipunan supreme leader and founder of the movement, he was not alone actually. There was Ladislao Diwa and Teodoro Plata among the original founders of the Katipunan. Bonifacio could not command the loyalty and obedience of the rebels in Cavite because not all of them were Katipuneros in the first place. Many were not sworn in. The only way to unite the rebels was to abolish the Katipunan, which was supposed to be a secret organization, but was no longer secret when the revolution broke out, and to form a new revolutionary government that would include non-Katipuneros. So there, what happened as a result of the fateful experience he encountered in Cavite, Bonifacio planned to return to Montalban and San Mateo. On their way to Montalban, and he and his followers passed by Limbon Indang, a place in Cavite where food was scarce and people were tight-fisted. At this point, Severino de las Alas turned his back against Bonifacio. No? The angered Bonifacio responded with threats and words that were wrongly interpreted by the people of Indang. Supposedly, ang lang threat is si ano lang, Severino de las Alas, but the people who heard it misinterpreted it as as it referred to them as in general. The people sought the help of Aguinaldo, who immediately ordered the arrest of Bonifacio. So on 27th of April 1897, skirmishes took place between the forces of Bonifacio and Aguinaldo. In the said scuffle, Ceriaco was killed, brother of Bonifacio, while Procopio and Bonifacio were caught. Bonifacio was stabbed in the neck, weakening him and soaking him in blood. The next day, the prisoners were brought to Indang Tribunal din to Naik. Within the day, General Mariano Noriel created a tribunal, no, that eventually tried and convicted the Bonifacio brothers of sedition and sentenced them to death. Surprised by the decision of the tribunal, Aguinaldo commutated the verdict. He recommended that Bonifacio brothers will be exiled to an isolated island, also found in Cavite. However, General Noriel and General Pio del Pilar dissuaded him, arguing that by reducing the sentence, the revolutionary government of the Philippines would once again be at stake, because still Bonifacio has a claim, no, to the leadership. Aguinaldo in the end changed his mind and signed the death sentence of the Bonifacio brothers. On the 10th of May 1897, Procopio and Andres were shot at Mount Nagpatong near Mount Buntis in Maragondon, Cavite. This event ended the short life of the Supremo. His educational attainment and military expertise may not have been equal to that of other heroes, but his love for the country was absolute. Grabe ang iyang paghigugma sa nasod. His name will always be revered and serve as the battle cry of Filipinos who yearn for freedom, oppression, and injustice. Then, the government of Central Luzon afterwards was formed. No? During this period, the Filipino rebels suffered from one defeat after another. The Spanish forces, on the other hand, suffered from tropical diseases and lack of experience, because by this time, mostly their members of the ranks are new. No? The Governor General then, this time is Camilo de Polavieja, who succeeded Blanco in December 1896, grew tired of fighting, so who refused to surrender. His health failed him, so he asked to be relieved. His successor, Governor General Fernando Primo de Tavera, who had served already as governor of the country, took personal charge of the military campaign against the rebels. By May, almost the whole province of Cavite was in the hands of the Spaniards, so Aguinaldo retreated to Batangas. Then people of the provinces of Zambales, Pangasinan, the Ilocos, Tarlac, and Nueva Ecija met at the Mount Pure and established the departmental government of Central Luzon. Due to broken and false promises, Primo de Vera failed to win over the Filipinos. Before July or early in July, Aguinaldo established a republican government at Biak na Bato, called Bato Republic. He ordered the preparation of the constitution for this republic, whom Felix Ferrer and Isabelo Artacho copied word for word the Cuban institution and just changed one article. The following day, officers were elected with Aguinaldo as the president and Mariano Trias as the vice president. Due to the difficulties suffered by both parties, some sort of understanding between them was made. Both was mediated by Pedro Paterno. The agreements made through the Truce of Biak na Bato are the following. One, that Aguinaldo and his men would go into a voluntary exile. Second, that Primo de Vera would pay Aguinaldo the sum of 800,000 in three installments. 400,000 upon his departure from the Philippines. Second, 200,000 when the arms surrendered to the Spanish authorities, which would exceed 700 pieces. Third, the remaining 200,000 when general amnesty had been proclaimed and the Te Deum had been sung. No, this is a church song. That Primo de Vera, I guess it's accepted now. Some used de Vera, some used Primo de Rivera. The book of Agoncillo used de Rivera, Primo de Rivera, would pay an additional 900,000 to the families or non-combatant Filipinos who suffered during the revolution. So on January 1898, peace reigns once more, but it's short-lived. But afterwards, by February, the truce failed due to the suspicions from both parties. Some of the Katipuneros kept their weapons to themselves because they do not trust the motives of the Spaniards. So afterwards, then by February, clashes started again. No? So the struggle continues. So the next chapter for this, which will be included in our final exam, I'll be giving you the article for this for that chapter. All right. Thank you and good luck on your final exam.